brick by brick and a stone by stone. It wasn't done alone. Spirit is the
Welcome. You are listening to Menstruction.
I go by a black.
Yo, let's go. It's time. It's me, BV, and this is the Reframe on the Black Velvet Radio program. And who am I? I am the man that's always in the garden because I'm so down to earth. Black Velvet. For those of you that are watching live, I thank you for joining the conversation. Make sure you go ahead and like and follow on that platform. For those of you that are watching the playback, make sure you like, subscribe, follow, share, all that good stuff. I don't know if y'all can see, but I kind of got this my celebratory fit on. Let's go ahead and drop the beat one time, shall we? Let's drop the beat. We gotta celebrate for a second.
On the beaches, workforce, Luigi, we deserve more. So got teeth the pains for breathe the flames of thousands, so we speed in figure eights. Yo, we infinitely pissed off. I can never take a L. Only wear a dog like me can rob your fists raw. Yeah, bits swap, shit's changed, but they wouldn't know cause they ain't switched draws. It's survival of the fittest, and they looking.
Listen, y'all already know what it is. Those that were paying attention, which I don't know how you couldn't because it was everywhere. It was the talk of the town, and it still is. We saw a monumental, meteoric success last night from the likes of a young Muslim man, an immigrant, a Mr. Assemblyman, now Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani in New York City, a new mayor. And there were several other elections last night across the country, mostly gubernatorial races, which are also very important and things that we have to cover. However, we are going to focus primarily on the mayoral race, what that means, some of the implications, and I want to discuss the continuation of this government shutdown that I'm sure is affecting a lot of people like myself and probably you all, people that you know, friends, family, friends of friends, and friends of family. The effects are continuing to proliferate. And we are now on, I believe, day 35 of this shutdown, this big, beautiful shutdown. And so what that means as we continue to move forward, and if that continues to be the case, as well as approaching possibly breaking the record for the longest shutdown. But we'll get to that. So let's start with congratulations. Man, the confidence that this man had, right? Going in, Mr. Assemblyman Mamdani. He was aware. He knew that he was saying the right things and was adhering to the right policies, and was sharing the right words for the people, for the constituents, for the citizens of New York City and all of the counties that covers. And it's interesting, right? He definitely came and put the big D, back into democracy, coming in as a social democrat. A Democratic Socialist, pardon me. And it's crazy, right? Because he's coming in and now he can really puff up his chest, right? And he can say to him, like,
yeah, you ain't really fuck with me way back then, girl. How about now? Because I'm up right now.
Because he's up right now. And I'm not going to lie, those New York citizens right now, I know they're feeling up right now. There's a wave, there is an energy across the country right now, given the circumstances, given the struggles, given the seeming deadlock that is resulting from the super uber majority that the Republican Party holds right now. As we discussed in the last episode, on the last show, you know, having the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judiciary locked up the way that they do, that has led to a lot of sweeping changes, a lot of which have been for the worse. But now we can really see that there are some seeds of change, and some of that unraveling, some of that overall deadlock, ubiquitous power being rolled back. And we're seeing the cracks as well with some of those gubernatorial races, with the one in Virginia going to a Democrat, as well as the one in New Jersey, again, going to a Democrat, and Proposition 50 in California, also getting a resounding yes. And so with that going in the direction that it is, and also with this pending Supreme Court decision with Louisiana and their congressional map, as well as what that may or may not do to the Voting Rights Act, there's a lot of things coming down the line, right? So when it comes to those gubernatorial races and that Prop 50 vote, I'm going to cover that in a separate video, but I want to make sure that that is mentioned here as well, because it's all connected in the seas of change, as I said very discreetly in the last episode. It is very important that we understand now is that time to engage in that activism. Now is that time to push those populist ideals. One thing that I want to point out, we're going to get to in a second as we cover the mayoral race in New York. The thing that seems to be making the major difference, obviously a lot of the votes, especially in those gubernatorial races, were opposition votes, right? Opposition to the power of the Republican Party, opposition to the pending policies of the Republican Party. But one thing that is resoundingly obvious in all of those races, the messaging about populist ideals, about economics specifically, is what is ruling the day. Those are the narratives that are ruling right now. We have to see that. We have to understand that. And even those on the right that are protesting and contesting what's going on with those that are attached to the MAGA movement, they're also saying they have focused too much on identity politics. They have focused too much on those other narratives and not enough on the populist ideals and on especially economic concerns. And as very key and crucial as we are seeing one of the largest, if not the largest, redistribution of wealth from the poor, the lower class, the majority of American citizens, to the wealthy, the rich, that top 1%. And I need those that look like me, those of us that are in the younger electorate, whose future this will be, whose country this will be, whose government we will be representatives in. You have to understand that this is the time. We are seeing the waves hit in the seas of change now. This is the time to step up. This is the time to engage. The playbook has been set. It was all put into play and was masterfully constructed with the Mamdani campaign. That is an example of what needs to happen and continue to happen moving forward into the midterm elections of next year, and then subsequently going into that general in 28. This is what it needs to look like. The engagement was there. The young vote, just us, that under 30 vote was there. And minorities, the blacks, the Hispanics, basically everyone that's non-white, which there are a lot of in New York, especially. Those were the individuals who made the difference, the major difference in that race especially. It wasn't even close. It wasn't even close. It was a blowout. So those things are prime examples. This is the time. Again, speaking to the young Black Americans in the voting population on the younger side, the under 30, the young vote as they call it. This is the time where we need to start pushing for the things that we need, for those changes. Whatever it is that we're looking at, that we're interested in, that we're engaged in doing, this is the time that we need to go ahead and push for all of those things. Let's get started and really look into dissecting what occurred with this race for mayor of New York City. It was a very interesting contention. You had obviously the front runner, Democratic Socialist, Zohran Mamdani. You had the establishment and the what's the term we want to use there? The regime of the Cuomos. Then you had, honestly, everyone's probably new favorite entertaining Republican, Curtis Lewa. Like, he very much so was giving 2015, 2016 Donald Trump energy coming in with some of his talking points and just how candid he was, right? He was very memeable. It was very, very memeable. And I think the thing that made him most entertaining is it very much so seemed like he believed everything that he was saying. Like, he was genuine. He wasn't saying it for the lulz, right? Like, these were genuine comments, thoughts, and ideas that he was saying. But it that's what made it that much more funny. And we're gonna get to that as well. I found a little compilation there on a lighter note, but let's get over here and first talk about kind of the breakdown of the electorate, the population that got Mr. Mamdani as mayor-elect here. Firstly, I want to shout out to Sabrina, Sabby Sabs here on YouTube. Please check her show out if you haven't. She does fantastic commentary, political commentary on most of the current events going on. And she does it in a very relatable, very school teacher, school counselor kind of way, which she says that she was a former school counselor. So she had a little bit of some good analysis here of the breakdown. So I want to start here.
Racial demographics. Drew Cuomo won, 45% of white votes. Zoran received 46%. So he even beat him a little bit with white voters. What is really interesting here is the Black vote. 55% of Black voters in New York City came out to support Zoran Mamdani, not Andrew Cuomo. Andrew Cuomo received 40% of the vote. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller so I can get rid of that part there at the top. I hate how they have this banner here, but that's just what they do. That's important for people to see. 49% of the Latino, Hispanic vote went to Zoran.
So let's just look right here at the general breakdown, right? So as you can see, the colors are aligned, mostly blue on all of these graphs, blue being Zoran Mamdani. In each of these racial demographics, he had the majority of that population, each one. For the whites, 46%, blacks, 55%, Hispanics, 49%, right? So something just to take into account. It is usually very much so presented that those more leftist ideals, right? Things that he was proposing, like those community-owned grocery stores, things like the rent freezes, things like the free bus system, radical ideas, right? Things that could never, ever possibly be achieved. And then there's always a question of how are we going to pay for it? That's not really what the people want, or you're over-promising. As you can see with the breakdown along the racial demographics across the board, that's what the citizens of New York City want. And so again, this goes back to the point from before that the identity of it all, right? The identity politics of it all doesn't matter. An immigrant, a Muslim man, a man who, for the most part, has no real governing experience, simply worked on the New York local assembly, right? A Democratic Socialist. All of those things in the face of the reality of New York City citizens who I'm sure pay some of the highest rent, who have some of the highest utility bills, who have to pay some of the most for their groceries. All of those things were being spoken to. All of those things were being addressed. But I want to keep going because then she's going to get into the breakdown of the age demographic within these categories. And that's where things are most interesting.
Asian vote, 61%, and other, 51%. Zohran Mamdani won every demographic, every racial group over Andrew Cuomo. That's important for people to see, right? So the Islamophobia comments coming from Andrew Cuomo, the endorsement from Donald Trump and Elon Musk, these things did not help Andrew Cuomo. It only made it worse for him. Wait till we get to something else. I do want you to see this part as well. When they just look at white and non-white, 46% of white voters went to Zoran, 50.
And so even when you look at this with white versus non-white, a plurality in this case of the white voters still primarily voted for him. Now, what we will see when we get to that age breakdown is most of those white voters are older voters, right? Which makes sense because on average, usually your older voters are a little bit less progressive. They vote for more moderate and or conservative policies. Just being at the point where they are in their lives, they want to retain certain levels of stability, tradition, so on and so forth, right? Even still, it's basically a 50-50 split, 46% to 45%. And then obviously for the non-whites, 54%, so the majority. Pay attention.
4% of non-white went to Zoran. So you can see, again, winning in all those groups. Let's get to gender by race. I think this says something here. I am very alarmed by the number of white men who voted for Andrew Cuomo, 48%. He won white men. Zoran, 52%. Some similar number didn't you get surprised by. 78%. 30 to 44-year-olds. He got 66%.
So look at that breakdown. Look at the two largest percentages of age ranges. The young voters. You're 18 to 29 and you're 30 to 44. They came out in droves. 78% for 18 to 29. Now, on a grand scale, if we're looking nationally, 78% for that age range is huge. Now, for New York, I would have to look at the previous data. That might be a little bit more customary for New York. So New York politics are very unique in that way. So it might be a very unique setup for New York and New York City. But still, there's something to be said, and it's something we really have to pay attention to with that age demographic right there, because they came out the most. And then subsequently, the 30 to 44, so the next age range up. So that's your Gen Z and your millennials, and the people in between, the zillennials. They came out the most. Why is this important? As we addressed on last show, there is a need for those two groups to be as engaged as possible right now. Why? Look at the change that's made. As you can see in all of these demographics, when you go up beyond millennials, when you get to your Xers and your baby boomers, they voted primarily for the establishment. They voted primarily for the quid pro quo. They voted primarily to continue the policies of old, to continue the regime. They wanted the two-time failed candidate, Andrew Cuomo, the besmirched previous governor of the state, Andrew Cuomo, the man who spent his time trying to downplay and criticize and chastise the policies being proposed by Zohran Mamdani that were, for the most part, just to erase or to combat the policies that he supported when he was governor. That's who they want. That's who they wanted. That's not conjecture. That's what the numbers show. So what does that mean? The seas of change, the pivot that will move us in the correct direction out of the times we're in now, move us to betterment and move us to being the superpower that we are supposed to be, is on our backs. The young voters, those of us that are going, we have growing up into our voting years, our primary voting years, as well as our primary working years, the times where we're supposed to be beginning our families, the times where we're supposed to be buying homes and whatnot, although we know what the state of that market is. These policies and these changes are on us. And as we saw a moment ago, when we go down the racial demographic, specifically, it's on the minority younger population, younger voting population. So those that I gave that call to action to the last time, young black voters, young brown voters, this is our time. This win is our win more.
'45 to 64, he got 43%. So Andrew Cuomo won that age group by 47%. And of course, Andrew Cuomo won 65 and over. But the point is this. One second. Ladies and gentlemen, I think Andrew Cuomo and the Democrat leadership underestimated the youth turnout. For all the years that I have heard commentators say, young people just don't vote. They don't come out. Young people, oh, you can't count on them. The youth vote heavily showed up for Zoran Mamdani. You know why? Because he ran on economic issues that impact their lives. For people who are over the age of 65 that may not be dealing with this idea of, I'll never be able to buy a home, or I have all this student loan debt, right? Who may not have to deal with those issues. The younger people do. And this is what I've been saying for a long time. My hope doesn't lie in politicians. My hope lies in the youth of today. They're the ones, they're more.
Absolutely well put. And shouts out to Sabrina. Please check out her channel. She makes amazing content. But that serves to the point right there. She said it very eloquently. There was an underestimation of our vote, because primarily the expectation is that we are not going to come out in big numbers, that we are not engaged in our civic duty, the political process. But it's quite the contrary. We're pretty tapped in part because of all of the connectedness that we have. We are the most informed generation that has ever existed. Ironically, sometimes we are also the least engaged for that reason. But that is a factor. That's not the factor. What this election has demonstrated, what Mr. Mamdani has demonstrated, is when you engage us, meaning that you engage and you acknowledge the issues that affect us, not just now, but that will continue to affect us and affect the trajectory of our futures. That's how you get engagement. And this is where you're seeing the difference in that generational perspective and the generational differences of the approach to the voting electorate. You saw it in the results of the vote, but also that was a direct reflection of the candidates. You had the old guard, the statesman, the neoliberal, who embodied the talking points and the attitude of the establishment, who instead of proposing actual policy changes, was doing everything in his power to support the mandate that he already put into play, to protect the policies as they already are, to maintain the systems as they already exist. So it's not that we're not engaged. It's that we have not been engaged. They, and by they, I mean who are supposed to be our representatives, our public officials, have not addressed the issues, the concerns of ours. But as you can see, when you do, not only do you get great support, not only do you get major engagement, we made the election. We made that election. Because the other blocks, that older white male vote was there. They voted as well. They voted primarily for Cuomo. We outvoted them. So this, again, is a prime example, a reflection of the call to action that I made last episode. And now we have direct evidence. We have a well-run election. We have the first Democratic Socialist on an official party ballot and will be in an executive position within the party now. We have the data. The playbook has been set. The examples have been made. So now is the time, because I can't repeat it enough. Now is the time for those of us, for Black Americans, Black and Brown Americans, young Black and Brown Americans, to go ahead and get involved. Get your activism and take it to the top. This is the time to engage in your populism. This is that time, because at this point, it's not going to get any more prime than this. If we let this opportunity pass, which they didn't fail the assignment. And with those gubernatorial races, they didn't fail the assignment. Seizing that moment, this is how you start that momentum going into those midterms of next year. If you want to see those changes, you got to do it. California had the right idea with Prop 50, with combating the things, the policies that are being set into place now. So I need us to get involved, to get engaged. Do what you can, do what you must, do what you will, but make your goddamn demands now. Make your engagement now. Coalesce, build your collectives, get involved, challenge your local representatives, and most importantly, get out to the vote. Get to your ballot boxes. It makes a difference. A lot of people come 24 for all those elections sat out because it was a lesser of two evil situation. And what did we get? By sitting out. Those who reliably vote outvoted us. And now, what's transpiring is their agenda. The power is always in the numbers. We have the numbers. And moving forward, guys, we're going to continue to have the numbers. This is our future. This is our democracy. This will be our country. This will be our national debt. This will be our foreign policies. We have to have that foresight. This is not new. This is what's coming down the line. But we have to engage now to be ready for the seas of change when they hit. So we're going to give Mr. Mamdani a round of applause, first of all. Much deserved for running a spectacular campaign. Much deserved. And let's go ahead and Drake, how is he feeling right now? How's he feeling right now? Tell us one more time.
Yeah, you ain't really fuck with me way back then, girl. How about now? Cause I'm up right now.
Cause he's up right now.
And you suck right now.
That's right. He's up right now. New Yorkers, shouts out Brooklyn, shouts out the Bronx, shouts out Manhattan, shouts out Queens. I know y'all up right now. I know you're up right now. So continue doing great things. And speaking truth to power, man. Because at this point, this how I imagine Cuomo's feeling right. That's what he asking in his head.
Am I fancy enough? Am I dancing enough? Am I handsome enough?
He's asking, right? Again, what's he asking himself?
Am I fancy enough? Am I dancing enough? Am I handsome enough?
All right. So I do want to go back to Mamdani's victory speech. So let's get to that, because there are a few points that he had that I think are very key to what I'm acknowledging, but also that definitely speak to how great of an orator and communicator he is. So let's get to that. All right. So let's start here with one of the better lines that he had.
My friends, we have toppled a political dynasty. I wish Andrew Cuomo only the best in private life.
Yeah, right. So, basically what he's saying right there, he was like, man, listen, it was great knowing you. I hope that there is a cold side of the pillow for you in your own home. Sit down and sit out. It's over. I just love that, though. That was a good quip there, where he was like, man, listen, I hope he has a great time at home. I hope he has a great time on his couch. I hope he has a great time in his non-rent controlled apartment. I hope. I will be out here making real change. So I thought that was big. Also, let's see here. He had another point here where he really, really embodied that spirit of it being about everyone and representing the diversity and the younger and more diverse portions of the electorate. See if this is right about here. Let's see.
All of us.
Yeah. And they went crazy on that one. They went crazy on that one. That's fire. That's just such a fire line. The expectations will be high and we will meet them. I mean, he said so much by saying so little. Again, it's really setting that agenda, going in line with what the call to action that I'm putting out there. Push for what you need. Push for the changes that you desire within your communities, within your homes, within your families. Because the expectations should be high for these people that are your representatives. And when you push and when you come out and you engage, you show that activism, that engagement, and you vote, this is what you get. You get someone who represents those things. And he might not get it on. Now we have to see, right? When you get sworn in on 1 January, we'll have to see how he actually governs when he gets there. But as of now, at the very least, he seems to be addressing the concerns of those people. So you get that, but you have to be engaged. One last part here towards the end, where he did kind of a call and response. And I just thought this was hard. And this is such New York energy. Such New York energy. Amazing. So listen, Gen Z, Black Gen Z, Hispanic blend Gen Z, Black and Brown Gen Z, and the millennials. Great fucking job. That's what it looks like to be engaged. Round of applause. All right. So let's switch gears. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are on day 35. As of the recording of this show, we are on day 35 of the government shutdown, on track to rival the longest government shutdown. In the midst of that, the contention still seems to be about maintaining the Affordable Care Act subsidies Democrats seem to be holding a very stiff line on maintaining those, as well as the House still being out of session, with the Speaker of the House still not swearing in Miss Grijalva, which would be the deciding vote in getting those Epstein files released. So we cannot be distracted and shall not be distracted by the victories being the small but important victories being had on Democratic tickets. It doesn't stop here. This is where a lot of people make mistakes, and we cannot follow this tradition. You cannot take your foot off of the gas. We have to be able to be multifaceted. So while people were rightfully engaged for these elections, you also need to keep in mind that this government shutdown has continued and that there is still much debauchery happening within the legislative branch. Now, with that being said, there seems to be this ugly, pejorative and scapegoat of old from the Reagan administration, the father of modern day neoliberalism himself, seems to have reared his ugly head again and now has become a part of what I would guess is electoral strategy. And that would be the concept of the welfare queen has come back around. And a video, actually a handful of videos have been circulating, AI generated videos of different groups of Black people out and about at different areas within different cities, complaining at businesses and being belligerent and disruptive because they no longer have availability to their SNAP benefits. Now, this is very important for two reasons. It brings together two things that we discussed on our last show. How AI is affecting us not just sociologically and the mental, social, cultural, political effects of that, but also how the dominance and that still super uber majority of Republican rule over all of the governing branches, over the legislative, over the executive, and over the judiciary has to base itself on some degree of bigotry and has to base itself on some degree of white supremacy. And now we're seeing a time where those two worlds are colliding. And I'll be honest, this is something that I would have never imagined seeing in my lifetime. But not only is it happening in our lifetime, it seems like it's something that is going to continue to happen and happen more often and become even more concerning as we move forward. If we do not get some of the necessary regulations, and we need some stopgap. I don't even know what the answer is at this point, because this is so heavily ingrained into our society and our economy at this point, because the growth of our economy over the last year has mostly been based off of AI. I don't have the data in front of me right now, but if you take the developments and investments into AI out of our GDP was like less than 0.5%, which sounds like we're probably headed for, 2008 2.0. But we'll get back to that. Racist influencers using OpenAI Sora to make it look like poor people are selling food stamps for cash. The government shutdown has officially reached a month in length, the second longest federal funding gap on record. That makes it a perfect storm for the chaos-fueled Trump administration, which now has a de facto kill switch that Elon Musk's Doge couldn't even dream of. As the shutdown drags on, it's wreaking havoc on the nation, leaving millions of government workers without pay. As a consequence, the U.S. is suffering issues like sporadic airport closures and massive delays in small business loan processing, issues which will surely have a negative impact on GDP. So again, if you take the AI growth and investments out of GDP, our GDP growth is almost zero. More. one of the most pressing issues of the shutdown is the effect on SNAP, commonly referred to as food stamps. The Department of Agriculture, which oversees the program, has warned that 42 million recipients would likely go without, starting a couple days ago, on November. Where the fight goes next is anyone's guess, but the eruption of the discourse about food stamps has been influenced by a disruptive new force, generative AI. Now, I want you to think about this as well. Taking away the programs and resources for sustenance for American citizens, all of which we pay for, right? Because these programs are sustained by our taxes, our tax dollars. The very people who are trying to take them away are the same people who are investing in the industries and the programs to continue to distract you from something as basic of a need as sustenance, food, nutrients. Now, as we will read in a second, the government hasn't necessarily been the ones who generated these videos, but they did not hesitate to proliferate them. And honestly, we're at a point now where we can't even say it's that far out of the realm that they would do it. Because there was that story some weeks ago where they took black high schoolers video, put it in some AI, changed it up to make it look like he was speaking out against ICE when he made some funny skit with his homies about the US not being attacked by, I think it was Iraq or some kind of Middle Eastern country. It was basically like, if you come for us, then we got you. We got smoke for you. And they flipped it, changed it, reposted it, and shared it with new captions as if he were saying, ICE, if you want to come at us in our community, we got smoke for you. And they were responding as if they had real deal beef. So it's not so far out of the realm of possibility. One clip, clearly labeled with a Zohran watermark, nabbed nearly 500,000 views on TikTok alone. It shows a black woman explaining to local news reporter how she sells her government assistance for cash. Quote, I'm gonna keep it real with you. I get over $2,500 a month in stamps, the woman explains. I sell them $2,000 worth for about $1,200, $1,500 cash. This is another thing too, going to what we were speaking about earlier in regards to the generational differences in approach within politics and the media landscape, and how that was a huge factor in the Mamdani success. Look at how socially and media illiterate these people are. The Zohran watermark is in the video. Now, we're going to watch the video in a second. And Zohran in and of itself is fascinating because of just how well it gets some of the mannerisms and the embodiments of people. It's very entertaining when it's not being used for these kinds of means. They can't even see the Zohran watermark and know that it's fake. There's also another creator on the conservative side, Brett Cooper, who apparently got caught up with one of these videos and was sharing it and was making a point about, I presume what was probably a bigoted point about, again, you see how the silly black woman comes out? They weren't using the SNAP program effectively anyways. They're just using it for their own financial gain, which again, completely glosses over the point that even with the recipients of SNAP, who are majority white, by the way, majority of the population that receives SNAP benefits are white Americans, by the way, doesn't even cover everything that you need. The people that need it have family. Grocery prices have been on the rise. All these prices have been on the rise. These things being exasperated by the shutdown that is being propagated by the people who are also trying to vilify you, the Americans that need that assistance. The shit is dystopian. The spin is crazy. But those same people are so media illiterate that they see a fucking watermark and don't know that the video is fake. Now, some people I think are being disingenuous. I think they do know and they don't care. But we're going to see the video. I'm going to lie. We're going to see one of them. The shit's kind of convincing. So let's go down here. There you go. Just look at this. Let's watch this. And you tell me, and jump down in the comments and you tell me, if you had seen this with no context, if this had come up on your on the homepage, your YouTube shorts, if this came up on your For You page on TikTok, if this popped up in your Instagram reels, would you know that this was AI if the Sora watermark was not there? Now, watching that, it doesn't have those usual parts that usually make it noticeable that it's AI, right? The voices and the mouse being out of sync, or some extra limbs or some missing features. That was pretty spot on. If you just saw that you were doing your regular doom scroll, would you even know? Read on. This video traffic, these videos traffic in vicious stereotypes. Heavyset black people become violent thieves when benefits lapse, while poor whites have thick Appalachian accents, gnashing on deep-fried possum with rotting teeth. Each reel is a shot of espresso for anyone cheering on a lapse and desperately needed food aid to the country's most needy. And even look at how that's proposed. Even those people that tend to align with the right, that tend to align with the more conservative side, or at the very least voted primarily for the Trump administration in 24. They don't see you as equals either. Yes, you have the benefit of being white, but let's be honest. They look at poor white Americans as only slightly above everyone else that's not white. They don't respect you either. And it's obvious because they're taking food out of your mouths. They're taking benefits away from your families. They're doing that. And they're well aware. They have the data. They know white Americans are the primary recipients. Poor white Americans are the primary recipients of things like SNAP benefits. But they still will go and play in your face with things like this. The slop apparatus does more than just generate clicks. Its despicable effect is to manufacture consent for undermining SNAP, a program that feeds roughly 42 million poor and working people across the U.S. According to the Nonpartisan Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, over 2/3 of SNAP recipients are either children, elderly, or disabled. Let's read that one more time. Over 2/3 of SNAP recipients are either children, elderly, or disabled. The people who are most engaged in this discourse are not even the individuals most affected. Children, the elderly, and the disabled. People who need the most representation by their able-bodied counterpart. Children are not engaged in the political process. The elderly are increasingly getting out of the political process. And the disabled, self-explanatory. They are being affected disproportionately more than the people who are starting the discourse. Of those able-bodied workers with at least one child who receive SNAP, a whopping 89% of them have jobs. And that's the other thing. Consistently trying to paint the recipients as lazy, as ineffective, as unmotivated, as pariahs and leeches of the state. Working class, because they try to fall back on making it a racial issue, but it's really a class issue. The working class are the primary recipients of SNAP. Working class, meaning you have probably multiple jobs and you still can't make the ends meet enough to feed your families. 89%, 9 out of 10 Americans. But instead, of focusing on the parts that matter, as it says here at the bottom, in the wake of the largest transfer of wealth from the poor to the rich, it's all a distraction. This is just running interference. They revere you like the dog in Up. They expect you to be engaged in the process, engaged in the conversation, and then squirrel, we're taking away your SNAP benefits. Squirrel! Did you see these welfare queens on TikTok and Instagram complaining that they can't get food to feed their families? Come on, man. What are we doing? What are we really doing? So I feel like that really synthesizes all the points. Where in one sector, on one hand, we're seeing how important the younger portion of the electorate is to not only the political process, but what the next generation, next 10 years, next couple of decades of policy and governance can look like. But on the other hand, we're still having to fight the systems and processes that are already in place. You still have to fight an establishment, and you still have to fight a conservative, ultra conservative base who's still engaging in bigotry from the 1980s, recycling the bigotry from the 80s. This is why, again, I say the call to action is key. The call to action is necessary because this is laughable. And what makes it even more laughable, but also more sad, is when it's effective. But that's also where the concerning part comes in, because AI and these automated processes are moving so fast. They're developing so quickly, and we are pumping so much money. And yes, we, because it's our tax dollars that are being used, is being pumped into developing these systems and these programs. They're building the power plants for these AI server stations in your backyards. They're using your power supply. They're polluting your environment and your water while subsequently taking food out of your children's mouths, your elderly grandparents' mouths, your disabled cousin and sister and friends' mouths, all at the same time. So big up and big love to all those New Yorkers and Mr. Mamdani for their success, as well as Abigail Spanberger and Mikey, I don't remember her last name, in New Jersey, as well as all of the citizens of California who voted in favor of Prop 50. You are all making great strides in the right direction. I'd be remiss not to say, don't take your foot off the gas. This is not the finish line. These are not the big successes that we need. These are simply steps in the right direction. These are catalysts for change, but the change hasn't happened yet. This is just getting the path paved so that the marathon can begin. So if you are watching live, I want to thank you for joining us and being part of this conversation and being here for another episode of the Reframe on the Black Velvet Radio program. Again, if you're watching the playback, thank you for watching as well. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share with your people to engage more of us in the platform. And all the shows, they run back the following day, 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. Just in case you miss it, you can run it right back and catch the full thing. So go ahead and get over there and subscribe. Yeah. So on that, always remember that this is the place where we bring nuance to culture. This is the place where we talk it how we see it. Love talking to you all. Keep talking. And I will talk to you later. Peace.